Hello, I'm Ronnie Eldridge. Welcome to Eldridge and Company. It's been almost 10 years since Luke Hayes started working in politics. In that time, he's gone from an enthusiastic doorbell ringer to a hard-working presidential campaign strategist. I want to know if he's still a believer and if he still loves the practice of politics. Welcome.
Thank you.
So when you were first my guest, I think you had worked in Mark Warner's campaign for the Senate in Virginia?
I was.
Did that come first or did the other?
That was Tim Kaine.
Tim
The
Kaine.
governor's race for Tim Kaine in 2005. I started off knocking on doors and.
You just graduated from college?
Yes.
And decided you wanted to do some political work?
Yes, I'd had a taste of it working in 2004 in Columbus, Ohio, and kind of caught the campaign bug.
That was for
It was for Vote Mob.
For Dean. Oh, not for Dean.
No, it was a C3 during the summer of 2004 that was trying to get the youth vote out and engaged. And
no, that's great.
That was my first taste of organizing. And yeah, in 2005, 2 weeks after I graduated, I was on a Greyhound bus from New York to Richmond, Virginia.
And he won?
Yes, yes.
So then, but more recently, it's been Obama.
Yes.
It was in 2008, and then you stayed on.
Yes.
So what did you do? You worked in the 2008 campaign. But what did it mean to stay on and work for that whole arm of the Obama administration?
I really did, you know, after 2 years of Bush, you know, I think the real appeal of, you know, President Obama was just to, you know, not just to get him elected, but to actually see
what he could do.
Yeah, see what he could do. And so, you know, I didn't want to kind of get out of the fight when in reality I felt the fight was just kind of starting.
And you were right.
Yeah, no, I think everyone underestimated the opposition in a lot of ways. But you know, in his first term, especially his first 2 years with you know, Democrats in Senate and Congress, I think just a lot of good legislation and programs were started that I'm certainly proud to have, you know, had a very minuscule part in.
So tell me, what was that part? Where were you?
The kind of continuation of the campaign from 2008.
And what was it called? The
Organizing for America.
Organizing for America. And where in Texas did you go?
I was based in Austin,
No.
which is
Well, that's not bad.
Fantastic city.
Yeah.
And I had a great time in Texas.
Yeah.
It was definitely different from New York in so many ways, but there are some commonalities with another big state that's very prideful of, you know, its history and its way of doing things.
I mean, Texans are proud to be Texans,
Yes.
the way New Yorkers are always proud to be.
Exactly.
So you're there. Obama's president. He has a legislative calendar and agenda. And what do you do? What do you do?
Well, we want to somehow translate the grassroots support that we had amassed in 2008 to help kind of leverage, you know, his agenda on the domestic front. And I think, you know, we learned some lessons just because it's a much different dynamic. So I think, you know, the levers to press on a campaign are different than the ones on legislation. That being said, I think you know, being there and kind of getting involved was a good learning process because nothing like this had really been attempted. And at the end of the day, you know, the midterms in 2010 were a hard, you know, hit of reality. But I think if you look at what was done in those 2 years and what people really got excited about and getting their friends involved with, you know, we're going to see those benefits for years.
So when you say levers, what did you do? You had an issue. Well, I guess it was health.
Yes.
Health fund. So you're sitting in Austin, and you're trying to build public support for the health plan. What do you do?
First was just an engagement and education. So we wanted people to know what was at stake and what was around, just because a lot of times people aren't aware of, you know, the legislation that's going on. So it was a combination of raising the profile, but also trying to educate people on what was this.
So you had to get volunteers.
Yes.
So you get these volunteers in, and then you tell them what the legislation is about,
Yes.
what the issues are. And then what do? Do they go door to door?
We didn't go door to door early on. At first, it was just kind of like you know, you kind of wanted to, you know, spread the word, so to speak. So having people, you know, host house parties and be like, hey, these are the 3 things we want in healthcare. This is what we're pushing for, just to kind of get the movement out there. And then our big thing was trying to make sure Democratic congressmen were behind the bill. And you know, one thing we found is that congressmen and women like to be thanked for supporting a piece of legislation you know, that is portrayed as controversial. So that was a a nice dynamic that some Congress people really responded well to us going to their town halls, going to their offices, and telling them, please vote for this bill. Thank you, thank you. And then we did. I think initially we thought there were some Republicans that could potentially support it, but in Texas, that very early on was not much of the case.
So in a way, it's what the president has found also, that people like to be thanked.
Yes.
And that he didn't thank enough people.
I think a couple lessons were learned as far as the healthcare push in 09 and 10. I think what was frustrating for me was just how much the process was hijacked by the kind of lies and disinformation from the right, and the money that was behind it to really not just start a whisper campaign, but really be an aggressive kind of corporate pushback against.
Were you shocked by it?
I was.
Yeah.
I probably was a little, naive about how threatened they felt by national health care. But I was surprised by just the strong sort of emotions it kind of roused up. And just in comparisons of our president to Hitler at a rally for health care just seems like a very odd allusion to make.
Are you surprised now when you see the reaction to gun control or any of the gun measures, at how the outside influences influence the members in the Congress?
I guess I'm not surprised by the influence. I'm just disappointed in, people's reaction to what I think is generally known to be a vocal minority espousing, a very kind of radical agenda, for gun rights or whatever they're calling it. And it's just frustrating to see how, the polling and the national, there's a broad spectrum of support across ideological lines for, I think, really kind of very smart and sensible legislation on gun control. And, Wayne LaPierre and the NRA and other nameless organizations are really rattling the cage quite a bit.
I want to come back to this, but I don't want to miss the next couple of years before we come back. So after you spent time talking about issues and organizing support for issues, when did the reelection campaign start again?
It started in 2011 in April, so he kicked it off, and it kicked off with an I'm In campaign, and that was really about re-engaging the grassroots and getting people engaged. And we'd found that, similar to the legislative education, a lot of people didn't know what the president had done in that first term.
Amazing amount.
Right, and so, it was incumbent upon us to really kind of make sure our supporters were, if asked by a friend, like, oh, cool, like, you support the president, why? And just being able to have, 3 or 4 reasons of why it was important to them. So that was all throughout 2011, really just engaging our grassroots. We didn't.
By this time you had left Texas?
Yes, I was in Texas in April, and then by the end of May I was in Nevada. Unfortunately, Texas was not a battleground in 2012, but Nevada was. So I got out to Nevada, and started with the organization there. We just got to work, re-engaging our grassroots and getting people engaged. We did have a little project just because we were one of the early states. So we had a caucus that wasn't exactly competitive, for obvious reasons. But it was interesting to see the other side. And
how it went.
Yeah.
So you got and you won, right? And Obama's been reelected. And now, how do you feel about all this? So, are you more cynical about politics? Or you?
A little bit. I felt I was actually more proud of the re-election than the election. Not to say 2008 wasn't a great accomplishment, but for me, 2012 was really a badge of honor because they'd thrown everything in the kitchen sink at us, and I was just, it kind of in some way restored my faith in the ability of voters to really kind of.
Did you have any doubt that he wouldn't be reelected?
I didn't. I've always been on that sort of Kool-Aid from the early days of the caucus. I just always felt there was, people would come to see the choice in front of them. I think what was hard in 2012 was just, I think, the anticipation of all the money on the other side that was going to be coming after us, and I think we were very wise about the spending of our resources as well as how we did it. And with the other side, I never quite got their sense of attack. It seemed scattered.
They didn't seem to have it. It wasn't
No.
very well organized.
No, it was.
What kind of opposition did you have in Nevada? Was it well organized?
It was well funded. So Sheldon Adelson, you know, has a couple of properties out there, and I think he spent over $100 million against the president, and so he not only was spending money against us, but was spending money against Congresswoman Shelley Berkeley, who's running for Senate, who actually, she used to work for him, and they had a falling out years ago, actually over union issues. So strip casinos are all organized by the Culinary Union, which is great. The holdouts are the Venetian and the Palazzo, which are owned by Adelson, who's very aggressively anti-union, so he had 2 targets in Nevada that he was going after, and they funded their money through Americans for Prosperity, and they were vocal. But as far as you know, they had nice-looking literature and all that. But as far as where they were spending their time and what they were doing, we found them not to be.
But you carried it for Obama.
Yes.
But
yes.
she lost.
She did, unfortunately.
And why do you think that happened?
It's hard to say. You know, a large number of people. You have the option to vote for none of the above. In
so
Nevada.
That's what happened.
It's so, you know, if you're dissatisfied, you can basically write, you know, column E or whatever you filled out in school, and that was a surprising amount of people that voted, you know, for none of the candidates. And I think it was, you know, it was such a nasty campaign that by the end, I think people were just kind of sick of both.
Did you were you surprised that Adelson, with all his money, allowed it to be spent not well?
I think that was actually the problem. I think the strings attached with the money really became bothersome. So I think you had people like Karl Rove, who I don't think is like this master genius of politics, but is smart and knows what he's doing as far as, you know, running a campaign. I think, you know, with Adelson and the Koch brothers and others, I think you could kind of see their fingerprints on it, because a lot of the super PAC ads were very, you know, attacking Obama for Obamacare was a very kind of, it was an established issue.
But it's amazing to find, I mean, they're really not that smart.
No.
That's my bottom line.
Yeah, no,
just because they have all this money doesn't mean they're very smart.
No, the messaging was all over the place and nothing new, and just really didn't.
And just because Karl Rove has a reputation doesn't mean he's a master.
Right, right.
So that's interesting to learn, right?
Yeah.
Was that important?
It was kind of, you know, there was a confidence that we had, you know, just with our program and just kind of seeing the early returns of things that we did and things that they did, and just kind of seeing that you could really start to see the hints of our path to victory starting back in the spring of 2012.
I always refer to it as demystifying the world. I mean, you know, you go in there and there are so many rumors and impressions that these people are in, you can't possibly do anything. But you can. That's what's so amazing. And I think that's such an important thing to keep, because that's what keeps you going. Right.
And there's I mean, I think this happens on both sides, but just when you have these sort of...
It happens all the time with everybody.
Fanatical sort of hatred for an individual or a party or institution, that it, you know, it really kind of blinds you to seeing any sort of nuance to, you know, really, you know, your strategy and tactics are clouded by this, you know, emotional response.
So did you find people responsive, and is there a great difference between people from Nevada, Texas, and New York? Can you find a common way to talk to everybody?
Yes. I think, you know, unsurprisingly, you know, how letting people talk about kind of their frustrations of, you know, this economy for the last few years, and just I think there's a general amount of frustration with the political process in general. So I think instead of talking to voters, having them talk to you is something you find wherever you're at.
Why are people frustrated with the political process?
I think there's a sense that it's not working on a very fundamental level.
What is it that they're objecting to? Is there a specific, do you think?
I think they just feel that you know, there's a lot of there's a lot of action and talk, but no one's looking out for them. You know, and there are people that we identified that voted for the president in 2008 and voted for a Tea Party congressman in 2010, and it was kind of out of this real sense of like, well, you know, I lost my house, I lost my job, I lost my pension. Like, I'm gonna, you know, I'm gonna take it out on anyone on the ballot until I get a sense of,
And
you know,
who did they vote for
that's
in
important.
2012? Did you continue the?
I actually don't know
Follow-up?
the data on that. I have a sense, just anecdotally, that a lot of them came back to us.
Yeah.
Because I think, you know, there was, you know, in 2010, a lot of people that did go over to the Tea Partiers were very much focused on, I want my job, you know, I want some sense of financial security, and that up and vanished when, you know, rather than focusing on anything, you know, constructive to the country's problems, the Tea Party focused on birth control and things like that.
Is it frustrating to get people to vote? I mean, can we convince people on a large that they must vote so we get more people participating?
I think, you know, there has been a little bit of an uptick, you know, in these last three elections in 2004, 2008, 2012, with regards to like 2000. So turnout's up a little bit. I think the nuanced message, I think, is that, you know, the unengaged voter, and I say this as someone that's like very engaged, like you almost wish that once you vote for someone, they kind of have fairy dust that can make their get their agenda passed and everything turns around. And I think it's more the process takes a little while. So, you know, voting for someone in 2008, you're not going to get health care, you know, a month later, or you're not going to see the minimum wage jump, you know, the next day. And I think just, you know, and getting people to be patient when they have really every right to be impatient and angry that, hey, you know, I want to see a pay increase, I want to afford to send my kid to college.
So the Tea Party was very successful in 2010 doing that. Are we going to be successful, do you think, in 2014?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think, you know, there's their drift to the right on just a variety of issues, I think, is, you know, they're almost becoming a caricature of how they're portrayed, and I think that's a kind of dangerous slope.
Did you find people were interested in state legislatures and legislators?
Not. I think there's, depending on which kind of voter you engage, you know, for activists, you know, a lot of them knew, you know, the legislators, but for the unengaged voter, not so much.
Yeah. Did you work with some of them?
One thing I will say, working in Nevada, is the state Democratic Party there is just very well run, and a lot of state legislators were really helpful to the campaign. You know, whether it's going on TV or coming to an event and just getting our volunteers excited. So that was a really beneficial relationship, and you know, in turn, you know, I think a lot of state legislators could see the benefit of presidential campaign and the increase in turnout, and you know, voters that we register is benefiting them as well.
So in the state elections, say for 2018, when we elect state legislators across the country, and they then reapportion, is there thinking about really doing a campaign to show the importance of that office?
I wish. I think it's, you know, the challenge with any sort of issue campaign is how do you condense that into something that's easily digestible?
So, yeah.
And I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah, but we have plenty of time to think about it.
Yes, and it's very significant. I think
Yeah.
you see some of these districts that are just so obviously, I mean, yeah.
Right, badly drawn
Yeah.
and misrepresenting what the constituency is. You, so you met a lot of people, and you met people who are really ideologically firm. And then you met a lot of people who were, you know, which way should I go? What's
Right.
going to be best for me, or something, right?
Right.
So how do you deal with all of this?
I think the scary thing is I think the amount of money and outside influence in politics makes me very wary of the people that have no base to hold on to. You know, in a lot of ways, I have more respect for Senator Coburn than I do for Mitch McConnell, just because you know, Coburn, I don't think I really agree with him on 98% of the issues, and will vehemently oppose him on several. But I think there's kind of a core belief system that he has, which I can at least respect, that it's not a vote to be bought or sold. Whereas with you know, Senator McConnell, it's much more you know,
I want to be majority leader.
Yeah, majority leader, and if you know, the Koch brothers funded $5 million to super PAC that, you know, made, you know, mustaches mandatory. I think, you know,
I would do it.
Yeah.
I was interested with Dianne Feinstein when she said something like, have some courage. That's why you're elected for 6 years, so you can vote your conscience rather than what you think's going to help you. So were you surprised at how important personal reelection is over and above your ideology? That's what astonishes me.
I think so. I don't
know how you face your voters or you or you live with yourself if you're voting something that you don't believe in, just so you can get reelected.
It's a slippery slope, and I think it's actually one reason I do believe in term limits. And I think sometimes they're done, like in Nevada,
In what?
in term limits.
Oh, in term limits. Okay.
You know, in Nevada, I think they're a little too abrupt. I think it's only 2 terms, which I don't think allows you to really kind of
Get hold
a
of
feel.
and really do, yeah.
But at the same time, it's, you know, I think if you're in Congress or Senate for 40, 50 years, it's, you know, I think it's, after a while, you start to kind of justify all these actions. Well, I'll come back because.
It's your world.
Right. And I think there's, you know, people point to the example of the late Senator Kennedy, who I think, yes, was, I think, fantastic for, you know, all of his years in the Senate, but I think he's more the exception to the rule.
Yeah.
You know, and that I think, you know, you go down this slippery slope if you justify every action as like, well, if I'm there another 2 years, another 6 years, I could do this. And
I like it. I like being
Right.
called honorable. I like the medical services. I like this. I like
Right.
that. Yeah. I like getting upgraded on an airline.
Right. And it's like, and at the same
That I've
time,
got the controllers back to work,
Right.
so I can take off. Right.
and like at the same time, it's like you want to go to them. It's like, well, you know, when you first got elected, you were very much like you wanted to get, you know, national health care passed, and that's why it's sometimes frustrating to see Democrats that have been in the House for so long, you know, because I think as many Democratic legislators, you know, one of those prizes that you aspire to on a national level is like that's a piece of legislation I
Yeah.
want to be a part of, and I think
Yeah.
it was just frustrating that some voted against it, you know, when
Very.
it came down to it, just because it was, hey, this is what, you know, public service is
Yeah.
for. So
But you know, it raises so many questions because so much now is a career ladder. You know, I'll run for the Assembly, then I'll run for the state Senate, then I'll run for Congress, then I'll run for the Senate, and then maybe I'll run for higher office. So how am I going to get there? So that becomes all your own professional thing. But if you have people that just run for, say, 8 years or 12 years and then they're out, how do they make a living? I mean, is that a question? And the other part of it is, do we become elitists that only, you know, people who have the ability to do something? I don't know.
Right. Well, I think it's kind of I don't think there's one solution to it or one answer.
Yeah.
I think, you know, I think exploring term limits is one issue. I think the public financing that New York City does, the matching funds, is another. Just because, you know, right now, if you want to run for Congress, you got to have access to quite a
More
lot
and
of
more
money. You know, and it's I don't think you ever see like, I mean, the Tea Party Congress is actually unique in that you did see like a librarian, well, not not a librarian, but you know, you did see people that, you know, were of the, you know, the working class, you know, taking that next step, and I think that was, in some ways, it was nice to see that.
The
But
problem was some of them that did it were terrible.
right. You know, and I think it's you know, there is something you said about, you know, having some veterans in the process, but I think it's new blood is never necessarily isn't automatically a bad thing, and I think for a political system that seems to be hard to work and ossified in many ways, that
I'm in total agreement with you. I mean, I supported term limits in the city, not only because I knew we'd never change the members of this city council.
Right.
They were there for years, and they were going to be there for years. They liked their parking permits, and they liked this, and they liked that, and also at the same time, it diminishes voter interest in trying to do something. There's nothing like a campaign to get people back and inspired to participate, right?
Definitely.
So what do you think the future is going to be? What are you going to plan to do? Did you ever think of running for office?
I did back in the day. Now, knowing what it's required to be a candidate, I don't know if that's necessarily my talents or strengths. I have a combination of respect for candidates because it's very hard what they have to do, and also just you know, I'm a little shyer. You know, there are a couple of things that I wouldn't be comfortable, and I feel like that'd be obvious to the voters I'm reaching out to. So
But it's early. You don't know.
It is.
You really don't know. Right. But you want to stay in this whole political business somehow.
Yes, I want to stay in the fight, just because, you know, I think
What's the fight about?
pushing towards that ideal, right? I think, you know, there's a lot of things on the wish list from the left that I think are good and need to be done. You know, there's something we've done about assessing, you know, climate change. There's stuff to, you know, I think help with economic inequality. You know, I think on the prison system in America and the justice system in America, there's a lot of things that still need to be pushed for. And I think what was unfortunate is I think people got so wrapped up in the election of '08 with President Obama that somehow he'd come in and one term would get healthcare, immigration, cap and trade, and like 9
Everything.
other. Yeah, it's like, some of those, healthcare had been pushed for 50 years, 60 years. It's every battle requires you to fight every step of the way. And I think, that's why I want to stay with it, because.
Do you get disappointed by compromise?
No, I don't actually. I think, I think there are lines that can be crossed when, brokering a deal. But that being said, I think, I think the common phrase is don't let the perfect become the enemy of the good. And I think that's always a tough pill to swallow sometimes, because sometimes you really are attached to that one amendment that doesn't quite make it, or that one piece that does get negotiated away. But I don't think for the process as a whole that compromise is.
It's important, I think. Yeah, you've got to be able to have it, because otherwise then people will really get turned off by the system.
Right.
And never change to appeal to everybody. So what are you looking to do?
I'm trying to figure out kind of, I've done very much the campaign world for quite some time now, so I'm trying to just see other avenues of, pushing the agenda. So, there's unions, there's organizations, there's C3s, there's C4s, there's 527s. So just kind of trying to get an idea of the landscape, because I think there's a lot of institutions that it'd be nice to join. I think part of the thrill and the challenge of a campaign is that, you go into a place and you have to create everything from scratch.
Yeah.
And it's fun when you're a little younger and have a little more energy.
Yeah.
But,
come on.
90-hour weeks start to take their toll. So just joining an institution that's already got some of that infrastructure set up.
Well, you know what I come away from all of this is I'm so glad that you're still engaged in it, and that you still have that excitement and that goal. And I thank you very much, Luke Hayes.
Thank you.
We're finished our half hour.
wow.
I can't believe it.
Yeah,
All
that was
right.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If there are any people you'd like to hear and topics you'd like us to explore, please let me know. You can write to me at CUNY TV, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016, or you can go to the website at cuny.tv and click on Contact Us. I look forward to hearing from you.